As the 19th century came to an end, the earlier experiments led to actual usable electric vehicles. Where internal combustion engines required hand cranking and smelly fuels, electric vehicles were easy to operate and clean to recharge, which made them popular. Manufacturers of these vehicles found a welcome market by targeting women. Baker Electric Vehicles, touted as the aristocrats of motordom, advertised that it was the electric that meets the needs of the society woman. And because there were no fumes, these electric vehicles were easy to adapt to closed cabins. The Electric Vehicle Company opened in 1897 and began absorbing various EV makers. 12 electric taxis were operating on the streets of Manhattan that year. By 1900, the company produced as many as 2,000 electric vehicles, becoming the largest manufacturer of motor vehicles in the United States. Early in the 20th century, EVC had expanded its reach of taxicabs to other cities on the East Coast and into the Midwest. Keeping the competition at bay was tough. Electric Vehicle owned the Selden patent, requiring a royalty paid by any company attempting to make a motor vehicle powered by an internal combustion engine. While EVC did have many companies paying for the right to use the patent, mismanagement within EVC and lawsuits surrounding the patent pushed EVC into bankruptcy by 1907. In the meantime, the growth of the electric vehicle manufacturers continued. Riker produced EVs in Elizabeth, New Jersey from 1896 until it was purchased by Electric Vehicle in 1901. Pope Manufacturing of Hartford, Connecticut produced the Columbia EVs starting in 1899 and was also absorbed by Electric Vehicle. Babcock and Buffalo EV companies were made in Buffalo, New York into the 19-teens. Around 1900, there were 75 companies supplying electric vehicles. At that time, about 38% of all vehicles on the road in the United States were electric. Another 40%, being powered by steam, left just 22% featuring an internal combustion engine. Following the success of Oldsmobile in 1901, the automobile industry shifted its center to Michigan, and many EV manufacturers followed. EV makers in and around Detroit included Argo, Century, Columbian, Detroit Electric, Flanders, Grinnell, Hupp Yates, Lindsley, Phipps, and Storm. After the introduction of the Model T, improvements in mass production, and the invention of the electric self-starter, demand for electric vehicles slid in favor of gas-powered vehicles, mostly the Model T. The popularity of the electric vehicle didn't get by Henry Ford. With his friend Thomas Edison, Ford himself planned his own low-priced electric vehicle, and in 1914 he told the New York Times, "Within a year, I hope we shall begin the manufacture of an electric automobile. I don't like to talk about things which are a year ahead, but I am willing to tell you something of my plans." The fact is that Mr. Edison and I have been working for some years on an electric automobile which would be cheap and practical. Cars have been built for experimental purposes, and we are satisfied now that the way is clear to success. The problem so far has been to build a storage battery of light weight which would operate for long distances without charging. Mr. Edison has been experimenting with such a battery for some time. Edison had been working on automotive-grade batteries since before the turn of the century. His first electric vehicle was developed in 1895. His newer nickel-iron batteries were expected to be demonstrated in a converted touring car as early as 1903. However, there are no reports that this actually happened. Development of the Ford continued into 1914, and rumors continued for 2 more years. The target price for the Ford electric car was between $500 and $700, with a range of up to 100 miles on a charge. As much as $1.5 million was invested in the project. Reports of the new car dried up after 1916, and the reasons for the end of the project are unclear. Apparently, Henry Ford focused on using Edison's nickel-iron batteries, but they were not suitable for automotive use. Another reason could simply have been that the Model T was less expensive and getting cheaper to produce by the year. In 1914, a Ford Model T touring car could be had for as little as $490. By 1917, the price fell to $360. Even at the low end of Ford's target range for the electric car, it would have been 40% more expensive than a gas-powered car sold by the same company. There was no looking back for Ford and the larger automotive industry. Dozens of companies produced electric vehicles, but most didn't survive past World War I. Nearly all were gone by World War II. Reasons for the downfall of the electric vehicle were many. While the 100-mile range of many electrics worked well for city dwellers, people in rural areas required a few more miles of use between charges. And simply charging electrics outside of the city could be difficult, as the push for rural electrification would not arrive until the 1930s, leaving many quite literally in the dark. Additionally, there was the price of the Model T, making even the lowest cost EVs out of the grasp of most Americans. The last straw arrived in 1911. Charles Kettering of the Dayton Engineering Laboratories Company, better known as Delco, invented a practical electric starter for the internal combustion engines, first featured on the 1912 Cadillacs. Self-starters were easier and safer than hand cranks, and by the end of the decade, even the Ford Model T featured it as standard equipment. Some manufacturers struggled to stay in business in the 1920s. Among the few remaining companies, Detroit Electric bowed to peer pressure, attempting to make their cars look more like the competition, even adding fake radiator shells. By the time World War II started, production of electric vehicles had virtually disappeared from the United States and across most of the world. But the idea of a practical electric car or truck would not disappear completely. After the war, entrepreneurs would try their luck at reviving the concept, but that's a story for the next chapter.